The boardroom would be her battlefield in exactly 12 minutes, and Sophia Chen was walking into a war she might not win. Her Louboutin heels clicked against the marble floor of Chen Industries' lobby with military precision. She'd built this empire from nothing after her father's death, turning a struggling import business into a $2.8 billion conglomerate. But family, she'd learned, was the sharpest knife of all. Her phone buzzed. Another text from her assistant. Marcus called an emergency vote. They have the proxies ready. Sophia's jaw tightened. Her cousin Marcus and Uncle William had been circling like vultures for months, buying up shares through shell companies, whispering poison about her emotional instability to anyone who'd listen. Apparently, being a woman under 40 made her unfit to run the company her own sweat had built. 11 minutes. She rounded the corner toward the elevator bank, her mind calculating votes and strategies, when a wall of muscle slammed into her. Coffee. Hot, scalding coffee exploded across her chest, soaking through her $3,000 Armani suit and burning her skin beneath. The impact sent her stumbling backward, her briefcase scattering papers across the pristine floor. Jesus Christ, I'm so sorry. Sophia looked up into the most startling green eyes she'd ever seen. The man towering over her was built like he spent his days throwing around something heavier than spreadsheets, with dark hair and a face that belonged in magazines rather than corporate lobbies. He was already reaching for her, his hands hovering uncertainly as coffee dripped from her jacket. Any other day, she would have eviscerated him. Today, Providence had just handed her a gift. Well, she said, her voice deadly calm as she took in her ruined suit. This is interesting. The man's face went white. Ma'am, I can pay for dry cleaning, or the meeting. Sophia pulled out her phone, her fingers flying over the screen. Rebecca, we have a situation. I need to postpone the board meeting by an hour. Wardrobe emergency. She ended the call and looked back at her coffee-soaked savior. What's your name? Ethan. Ethan Stone. He was scrambling to collect her scattered papers, his movements quick and efficient despite his obvious panic. I'm here for the senior analyst interview, but I understand if you're early. Sophia studied him with new interest. Something about his movements was too smooth, too controlled. Like a predator pretending to be prey. Rebecca will escort you to the conference room. I'll be back in 30 minutes. She walked away without another word, leaving Ethan Stone staring after her with those unsettling green eyes. 20 minutes later, she returned in a fresh suit and a much better mood. Marcus would be furious about the delay, which meant her cousin was nervous. Nervous people made mistakes. The conference room buzzed with quiet conversation as she entered. 3 candidates sat at the polished table, but her attention went straight to Ethan Stone. He'd cleaned up, though she caught him touching his tie like he wanted to straighten it. When he saw her, his entire body went rigid. Gentlemen, she said, taking her seat at the head of the table. Let's begin. The first 2 candidates were forgettable, MBA clones with impressive resumes and zero imagination. But when Ethan started talking, the room changed. His financial projections were brilliant, cutting through market complexities like a blade. He saw patterns others missed, connections that shouldn't exist but did. More importantly, he was nervous as hell because he'd recognized her. Sophia leaned back in her chair, studying him. He kept glancing at her like she might explode, which was adorable in a man who looked like he could bench press her desk. But his mind, that was what interested her. That analytical brain could be exactly what she needed to outmaneuver her family. Mr. Stone, she said when he finished his presentation. You're hired. What? He blinked, his composure cracking. Just like that? Just like that. Rebecca will handle the paperwork. You start Monday. She stood, gathering her materials. Welcome to Chen Industries. She was halfway to the door when it opened, and Miranda Stone swept in like she owned the building. Sophia knew Miranda by reputation, the society wife who'd married into old money and never let anyone forget it. She was elegant in that brittle way of women who'd weaponized their beauty, with silver blonde hair and cold blue eyes that missed nothing. "Ethan," Miranda said, her voice dripping disappointment. "What are you doing here?" The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Ethan's face went carefully blank, but Sophia caught the muscle ticking in his jaw. "Working," he said quietly. Miranda laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. "Working? Oh, darling, this is adorable. Playing dress up in daddy's clothes, pretending to be something you're not." Her gaze swept over him dismissively. "Though I suppose even bastard sons need to eat." The words hit like a physical blow. Sophia watched Ethan's hands clench at his sides, watched him shrink into himself, and something cold and furious unfurled in her chest. "Mrs. Stone." Sophia's voice cut through the room like ice. "How lovely to see you slumming it with the working class." Miranda's smile faltered. "Excuse me? I said it's lovely to see you here, though I'm curious why you're insulting my employees in my conference room." Sophia stepped closer, her smile razor-sharp. "Mr. Stone just gave the most impressive presentation I've seen all year. Perhaps your husband should have invested in his education instead of whatever charity function brought you here today." The silence stretched taut. Miranda's face flushed, her composure cracking. "Your employee," she managed. "Senior analyst, effective immediately." Sophia didn't break eye contact. "I'm sure you can find your own way out. Security will escort you if needed." Miranda's lips pressed into a thin line. She looked between Sophia and Ethan, something ugly flickering in her eyes, then turned on her heel and stalked out. Ethan stared at Sophia like she'd just slayed a dragon. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You didn't have to. I don't do charity, Mr. Stone. You earned that position." She moved toward the door, then paused. "I have a client dinner tonight. 7 o'clock at Meridian. Bring the Henderson portfolio analysis." Are you asking me to?" "I'm telling you. Welcome to the big leagues." Meridian was the kind of restaurant where deals worth billions happened over wine that cost more than most people's cars. Sophia had chosen the corner table, the one that gave her clear sight lines and made eavesdropping impossible. Ethan arrived precisely at 7, looking uncomfortable in his well-tailored suit. She'd been watching him all week, noting the way he moved through the office like he was mapping escape routes, the way other employees gave him space without quite knowing why. "Relax," she said as he sat down. "You look like you're about to be executed." "Feel like it," he muttered, then caught himself. "Sorry. I'm not used to places like this." The Henderson deal was worth $50 million, but the clients, two silver-haired sharks named Preston and Mills, spent the first hour trying to get her drunk. Subtle at first, refilling her wine glass, ordering rounds of champagne to celebrate the partnership. When that failed, they moved to harder tactics. "To strong women in business," Preston said, raising his glass with a predatory smile. "Sophia, you're an inspiration. Drink up." Sophia reached for her wine, but Ethan's hand intercepted hers smoothly. "Actually, I think Sophia mentioned she had an early morning." He switched their glasses seamlessly, downing what would have been her fourth refill in one gulp. "But I'm happy to celebrate on her behalf." The move was so smooth, so perfectly executed, that she almost missed it. But she caught the slight nod he gave her, the way his eyes stayed sharp despite the alcohol he was absorbing. By the time dessert arrived, Preston and Mills were frustrated and Sophia was stone sober. The contracts were signed in her favor, with penalty clauses that would have made her lawyers weep with joy. "Gentlemen," she said, standing as they prepared to leave. "Always a pleasure doing business with honorable men." The sarcasm was lost on them, but Ethan's mouth twitched. They walked to the parking garage in comfortable silence. Sophia's driver had gone home hours ago. She'd planned to take a cab, but Ethan gestured toward a sleek black motorcycle. "I can give you a ride," he offered. "If you trust me not to dump coffee on you again." She should have said no. Should have called a car, maintained professional distance. Instead, she found herself accepting the helmet he offered, letting him help her onto the bike behind him. The ride through the city was exhilarating. Ethan drove like he did everything else, with controlled precision and underlying power. Sophia found herself gripping his waist, feeling the solid strength of him, breathing in his scent over the wind. He pulled up outside her building, killing the engine. The sudden silence was deafening. "Thank you," she said, removing the helmet. "For tonight. For everything." He turned to face her, and suddenly they were inches apart. His eyes were darker in the dim light, and she could see flecks of gold she'd missed before. When he reached up to help her with the helmet strap, his fingers brushed her cheek. Time stopped. The kiss was an accident, a moment of proximity and adrenaline and something deeper neither of them wanted to name. His lips were warm, firm, tasting of wine and promises. For a heartbeat, Sophia let herself melt into it, let herself be just a woman instead of a CEO. Then reality crashed back. They sprang apart, both breathing hard. Ethan started. "Yes," Sophia said quickly, climbing off the bike. "You should. Good night, Mr. Stone." She walked toward her building without looking back, her heart hammering against her ribs. Behind her, she heard the motorcycle roar to life and disappear into the night. In her penthouse, she poured herself a drink and tried to make sense of what had just happened. Ethan Stone was supposed to be her secret weapon against her family, not a complication. But something about him, the way he defended her business interests, the way he'd looked at Miranda like she was something he wanted to destroy, made her think there was more to her new employee than met the eye. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number: "The packages have been delivered. Your office is now equipped for better communications. M." Sophia stared at the screen, ice forming in her veins. Marcus. Her cousin had just told her he'd bugged her office. The takeover attempt wasn't just about money or power. It was about destroying her completely. And tomorrow, she'd have to figure out if Ethan Stone was an ally or just another enemy wearing a friendly face. Chapter 2. Sophia didn't sleep that night. She sat in her home office until dawn, surrounded by financial records, proxy statements, and shell company filings that painted a picture uglier than she'd imagined. Her family wasn't just trying to steal her company, they were planning to gut it and sell the pieces. By 6 a.m., she had 3 pots of coffee in her system and a migraine that could level buildings. But she also had answers. The shell companies led back to a web of offshore accounts, all traced to one name that made her blood run cold: Victor Kane. Kane Industries was her biggest competitor, a ruthless conglomerate that had been systematically destroying smaller companies for the past 5 years. If Kane got his hands on Kane Industries, he wouldn't just own her life's work, he'd own her. Her phone buzzed. Ethan, texting at an ungodly hour: "Early meeting prep ready. Need anything?" She stared at the message, remembering the kiss, the way he'd protected her business interests without being asked. The way he'd looked at Miranda Stone like she was something that needed to be eliminated. "My office. Now." Ethan arrived 20 minutes later carrying coffee and what looked like a full financial analysis. His hair was damp from a shower, and he'd obviously thrown on clothes in a hurry, but his eyes were alert and focused. "You look like hell," he said without preamble, setting the coffee on her desk. "Charming. How do you feel about corporate espionage?" His eyebrows rose. "Is that what we're calling last night's client dinner?" Despite everything, Sophia almost smiled. "No, this is what we're calling my family's attempt to destroy everything I've built." She turned her laptop toward him. "Tell me what you see." Ethan studied the screen, his expression growing darker with each scrolling page. "Shell companies. Coordinated stock purchases. They're not trying to take over, they're trying to hollow you out." His fingers flew over the keyboard, pulling up additional data she hadn't thought to look for. "Jesus, Sophia. How long has this been going on?" 8 months. Maybe longer. She watched him work, noting the way his movements became more predatory as the scope of the conspiracy became clear. "There's more. The shadow investor behind the shell companies is Victor Kane." Ethan's hands stilled on the keyboard. For just a moment, something dangerous flickered across his face, something that made the air in the room feel charged and threatening. "Kane," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "You know him?" "Everyone in corporate finance knows Victor Kane." Ethan's jaw was tight. "He's been acquiring and dismantling companies for years. Hostile takeovers, asset stripping, leaving thousands of people unemployed." He looked up at her. "If Kane's involved, this isn't just about money. He wants to destroy you personally." The certainty in his voice made her pause. "How can you be so sure?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment, staring at the screen. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "Because that's what predators do. They don't just hunt for food, they eliminate competition." Something in his tone made her study his profile more carefully. There was a tension in him she hadn't noticed before, a controlled stillness that reminded her of documentaries about apex predators. "We need more information," she said finally. "Financial records, communication logs, anything that ties Kane to my family directly." "I can get that," Ethan said. "Give me 48 hours. "How?" He met her eyes, and she saw something wild flicker in those green depths. "Trust me." Over the next 2 days, Sophia learned that trusting Ethan Stone was both the smartest and most dangerous thing she'd ever done. He moved through the corporate world like smoke, extracting information that should have been impossible to find. Financial records appeared on her desk, communication logs that exposed her uncle's private conversations with Kane's lawyers, evidence of bribes and threats that painted her family as willing accomplices in their own betrayal. But it was the small things that caught her attention. The way he never seemed to eat during the day but consumed massive amounts of food at dinner. The way he always knew when someone was approaching her office before they knocked. The way he watched crowds like he was cataloging threats. And the way he looked bone-deep exhausted every morning. "Where are you living?" she asked him on Thursday afternoon, when he'd been working for almost 20 hours straight. Ethan paused in his typing. "What?" "You heard me. Where do you go at night?" She'd been watching him carefully, noting the careful way he avoided personal questions, the expensive clothes that showed signs of being slept in. "I have a place." "Liar." She closed her laptop and leaned back in her chair. "You're sleeping in your car, aren't you?" His face went carefully blank. "That's not your concern. It is if it affects your work performance. And it is if you're doing it out of some misguided pride because Miranda Stone made you feel like you don't deserve better." The muscle in his jaw ticked. "I don't need charity." "Good, because I'm not offering any." Sophia stood, moving to the window that overlooked her estate. "I have a guest house. Full kitchen, separate entrance, private parking. I'm offering it to you as part of your compensation package." "Sophia." "It's a security measure," she continued, cutting off his protest. "Kane is escalating his attacks. I need someone I trust close by." She turned to face him. "Unless you don't think you can handle protecting your boss?" It was a calculated challenge, and it worked. Ethan's spine straightened, his eyes flashing with something that looked almost feral. "Fine," he said. "But I pay rent." "Fine. $1 a month. 1,000. 50. 500. 100, and you cook dinner twice a week." "I hate takeout." Despite everything, Ethan's mouth quirked upward. "Deal." Having Ethan living on her property changed everything. Sophia had always been fiercely independent, but there was something comforting about knowing he was there. She'd catch glimpses of him running the perimeter of her estate at dawn, moving with a fluid grace that shouldn't have been possible for someone his size. Sometimes she'd look out her office window and see him on the guest house deck, perfectly still, watching the tree line like he expected threats to emerge from the shadows. More disturbing were the nights she'd wake to the sound of someone prowling her gardens, only to see Ethan's silhouette moving between the trees with predatory purpose. He always claimed he couldn't sleep, that he was just walking, but Sophia began to suspect there was more to her mysterious employee than exceptional analytical skills. The attraction between them grew stronger, fed by proximity and shared purpose. When they worked late into the night, she found herself stealing glances at the way his shirt stretched across his shoulders, the way his hands moved with controlled precision over the keyboard. When he brought her coffee in the morning, their fingers would brush, and she'd feel electricity arc between them. But it was his absolute loyalty that undid her defenses. Ethan defended her interests like they were his own, anticipated her needs before she voiced them, and showed a fierce protectiveness that went beyond professional duty. When board members questioned her decisions, he had facts and figures ready to support her position. When journalists tried to corner her with hostile questions, he appeared at her elbow like a shield. It was during one of these moments that she realized she was falling for him. Ms. Chen, the reporter, had cornered her outside the courthouse after a hearing on Kane's latest lawsuit. Sources say your family believes you're emotionally unstable. How do you respond to claims that a woman your age isn't equipped to handle the pressures of running a major corporation? Sophia felt her temper flare, but before she could respond, Ethan stepped smoothly into the frame. Ms. Chen's leadership has increased company profits by 40% in the past 2 years, he said, his voice carrying quiet authority. Her emotional stability can be measured by the fact that she's built a multi-billion-dollar empire while her critics have achieved what, exactly? He guided Sophia toward the car with one hand on her back, his presence somehow making the crowd of reporters step aside. No further questions. In the car, Sophia found herself studying his profile as he drove. Thank you. Just doing my job. No, she said quietly. That was more than a job. Their eyes met in the rearview mirror, and something passed between them that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with the growing connection neither of them wanted to acknowledge. The charity gala was supposed to be a victory lap. Sophia had successfully blocked Kane's latest acquisition attempt, secured 3 major contracts, and watched her stock price climb steadily upward. The St. Catherine's Children's Hospital benefit was the kind of high-profile event where she could network, show strength, and remind the business community that Chen Industries wasn't going anywhere. She chose a midnight blue gown that hugged her curves and made her look like she could buy and sell everyone in the room, which, frankly, she probably could. Ethan wore a black tuxedo that transformed him from analytical genius to something that belonged on magazine covers. Try not to intimidate anyone into cardiac arrest, she murmured as they walked into the ballroom. That's your job, he replied, but his attention was elsewhere. His eyes swept the crowd constantly, cataloging faces and exits with military precision. The evening started perfectly. Sophia worked the room with practiced ease, securing promises of support and making strategic connections. Ethan stayed close but unobtrusive, the perfect combination of bodyguard and business partner. It was during the cocktail hour that things went wrong. Marcus approached with champagne and his politician's smile. Sophia, you look radiant. I wanted to apologize for our recent disagreements. Family business can be so complicated. Sophia accepted the glass but didn't drink. After a week of discovery, she knew exactly how complicated her cousin's business had become. Marcus. How thoughtful. She set the champagne on a nearby table without tasting it. Though I'm surprised you have time for family gatherings, given your new partnership with Victor Kane. Her cousin's smile faltered for just a moment. I don't know what you mean. Of course not. Sophia picked up a different glass from a passing waiter's tray. Silly me, thinking you'd be honest about selling our family's legacy to a corporate raider. Marcus's face darkened. You always were paranoid, Sophia. It's that emotional instability everyone talks about. She was raising the glass to her lips when Ethan's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with surprising force. Don't, he said, his voice rough with something that sounded like panic. What? The smell. His nostrils flared, and his eyes took on an almost golden cast. Something's wrong with it. Marcus stepped back, his face going pale. I don't know what you're implying. Ethan moved faster than should have been humanly possible. One moment he was beside Sophia, the next he had Marcus pinned against the wall, his hand around her cousin's throat. What did you put in it? Ethan's voice was a growl that seemed to resonate from somewhere deeper than his chest. Nothing. I don't, let go of me. But Sophia was staring at Ethan in shock. His canine teeth seemed longer, sharper. His eyes had definitely changed color, shifting from green to molten gold. And the way he held Marcus, with strength that should have been impossible for a human being. Ethan. Her voice cut through whatever rage was driving him. Let him go. He released Marcus so abruptly that her cousin stumbled. Marcus straightened his tie with shaking hands, shooting terrified glances at Ethan. You're both insane, Marcus gasped. I'm calling security. Do that, Sophia said calmly. I'm sure they'll be fascinated by the GHB in that champagne glass. Marcus went white as paper. Without another word, he fled into the crowd. Sophia turned to face Ethan, who was breathing hard and looking like he wanted to chase her cousin down and finish what he'd started. We need to talk, she said quietly. Now. They found privacy in a small garden alcove behind the hotel. Ethan paced like a caged animal while Sophia leaned against a stone wall, her mind racing. How did you know? She asked finally. Know what? Don't. Her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. Don't lie to me, Ethan. Not now. You smelled the drug in my drink. Your eyes changed color. You moved faster than any human being could move. She pushed away from the wall, stepping closer to him. What are you? Ethan stopped pacing. For a long moment, he just stared at her, and she could see him weighing options, calculating risks. You won't believe me, he said finally. Try me. He ran a hand through his hair, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I'm a werewolf. The words hung in the air between them. Sophia felt her world tilt, rearrange itself, and settle into a new configuration that was both terrifying and oddly logical. A werewolf, she repeated. Yes. As in, full moon, howling at the night, supernatural creature werewolf. Among other things. Sophia was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then she laughed, a short, sharp sound that held no humor. You know what pisses me off most about this, she said. Ethan braced himself. That I'm a monster? That you didn't trust me with the truth? She stepped closer, her eyes blazing. I've built my entire career on loyalty and transparency, Ethan. I've trusted you with my company, my family's secrets, my life. And you've been lying to me from the beginning. I was trying to protect you. From what? From knowing that the man I've been falling for isn't entirely human? The admission slipped out before she could stop it, and she saw Ethan's eyes widen in shock. Sophia. How long have you known about Cain? The question seemed to come from nowhere, but Ethan's face went carefully blank in a way that told her everything she needed to know. What do you mean? You said Cain eliminates competition. You said it like you knew from personal experience. Her mind was working frantically, connecting dots she hadn't wanted to see. You're not just a werewolf, are you? You're connected to Cain somehow. Ethan's silence was answer enough. Tell me, she demanded. All of it. Now. Ethan looked like he was facing execution. Cain Industries isn't just a corporation. It's a pack. Victor Cain is the alpha, and most of his executives are wolves. They use supernatural abilities to gain advantages in business, enhanced senses to read opponents, physical intimidation, pack loyalty that goes beyond normal corporate structure. And you? I was part of that pack. Cain is my uncle. Miranda is his sister, which makes her my stepmother and Cain's inside source in my father's company. His voice was hollow. Cain wanted me to help destroy other businesses, to use my abilities to steal secrets and break competitors. When I refused, he had me exiled. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. So you took a job with Chin Industries? Not because of Cain, Ethan said quickly. I didn't know about his connection to your family when I applied. I just needed work, needed to disappear. He stepped toward her, his expression desperate. I swear to you, Sophia, I didn't know Cain was targeting you until we found those financial records. But you suspected. He stopped, his shoulders sagging. Yes. When I saw how methodical the attack was, how personal. It had Kane's signature all over it. Sophia felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. So what am I to you, Ethan? A convenient job? A way to get revenge on your uncle? You're everything, he said, the words torn from somewhere deep inside him. You're smart and fierce and loyal, and you've built something incredible with your bare hands. You fight for your people, you never back down from a challenge, and you've shown me what it means to have someone worth protecting. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. You're the reason I remember what it feels like to be human. Despite everything, the lies, the deception, the supernatural revelation that should have sent her running, Sophia felt her resolve waver. Because she could see the truth in his golden eyes, could hear the raw honesty in his voice. Sophia. A new voice cut through the garden air like ice. They both turned to see a man approaching through the shadows. He was tall and lean, with silver-streaked dark hair and eyes that seemed to glow in the moonlight. He moved with predatory grace, and even from a distance, Sophia could feel the power radiating from him. Ethan stepped protectively in front of her, his body going rigid. Kane. Victor Kane smiled, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp. Nephew. You've been a very difficult man to find. His gaze shifted to Sophia, and she felt like she was being evaluated by something that saw her as prey. Ms. Chen. Such a pleasure to finally meet the woman who's been giving me so much trouble. The pleasure's all mine, Sophia replied, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. Kane's smile widened. I do hope Ethan has been helpful in his new position. Though I suspect he's been less than forthcoming about his qualifications. He stepped closer, and Sophia caught a whiff of something wild and dangerous. You see, Ms. Chen, my nephew here is something of a family disappointment. Exiled from his pack for refusing to embrace his true nature. Reduced to taking charity positions with companies he's supposed to be destroying. Is that what you think this is? Sophia asked. Charity? Isn't it? Kane's eyes glittered with malicious amusement. A powerful businesswoman taking pity on the bastard son of a rival family? How touching. Your nephew is the most brilliant analyst I've ever worked with, Sophia said calmly. His insights have saved my company millions of dollars and exposed a conspiracy that reaches to the highest levels of my board. If that's your idea of charity work, I'd hate to see what you consider actual competence. Kane's expression darkened. Careful, Ms. Chen. You don't know what you're dealing with. Don't I? Sophia stepped around Ethan, ignoring his warning growl. I'm dealing with a corporate raider who's been using supernatural abilities to destroy honest businesses. I'm dealing with a man who's so threatened by competition that he has to resort to drugging his opponents at charity galas. She smiled, showing teeth of her own. And I'm dealing with someone who's about to learn that human women can be just as ruthless as any wolf. The silence stretched between them, charged with violence barely held in check. Kane's nostrils flared, and for a moment, Sophia thought he might actually attack her. Instead, he laughed. You have no idea what's coming for you, he said. Ethan may have told you some of our family secrets, but he's left out the most important part. Kane's gaze shifted to his nephew, and something cruel flickered in his eyes. Tell her, Ethan. Tell her why you were really exiled. Tell her what you did to earn a death sentence from your own pack. Ethan's face went ashen. Kane. Tell her, Kane continued, his voice dropping to a dangerous purr, about the humans you killed. The words hit Sophia like a physical blow. She felt the world tilt again, felt everything she thought she knew about Ethan crumble into dust. Is it true? She whispered. Ethan closed his eyes, his entire body radiating defeat. Yes. Kane's laughter followed them as Sophia turned and walked back toward the hotel, leaving both men standing in the garden shadows. Her mind was reeling, her heart breaking, and she had no idea who she could trust anymore. But one thing was certain, the war for Chen Industries had just become infinitely more complicated. And infinitely more dangerous. Wanting to see what would happen next, subscribe to this channel to get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. Chapter 3. The silence in Sophia's office Monday morning was deafening. She sat behind her desk, staring at the resignation letter she'd written and rewritten 6 times. Each version said the same thing in different words: Ethan Stone was terminated, effective immediately, for failure to disclose material conflicts of interest. The truth was uglier. She was firing him because she was falling in love with a man who'd killed people, and she couldn't separate her heart from her head long enough to think clearly. When Ethan knocked on her door at precisely 9 a.m., she didn't look up from her computer. "Come in." He entered carrying coffee and the Henderson follow-up reports, moving with that careful grace she now knew came from supernatural strength. The sight of him in his perfectly tailored suit, looking like any other corporate executive, made her chest tight with something between anger and grief. "The quarterly projections are ready for your review," he said, his voice carefully professional. "And I have the Kane Industries analysis you requested." "Set them on the desk." Sophia finally looked up, noting the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. He looked like he hadn't slept. Good. Neither had she. Ethan placed the files down but didn't move away. "Sophia, about Saturday night." "Mr. Stone." Her voice cut through his words like ice. "Please clean out your desk. Security will escort you from the building within the hour." The words hung in the air between them. Ethan went very still, and for a moment she saw something wild and desperate flicker across his face. "You're firing me." "I'm terminating your employment, yes. Because of what Kane said." Sophia stood, moving to the window so she wouldn't have to look at him. "I'm firing you because you lied to me about who you are, what you are, and why you're here. I'm firing you because I can't trust anything you've told me." She turned to face him, forcing steel into her voice. "And I'm firing you because I can't have a killer working for my company." Ethan flinched like she'd struck him. "Sophia, please. Let me explain." "Explain what?" "That you didn't mean to deceive me? That the people you killed deserved it? That you're not really a threat to me or my employees?" She shook her head. "I've built this company on trust and transparency. You violated both. I never lied about my loyalty to you." "Your loyalty?" Sophia laughed, the sound bitter. "You're Victor Kane's nephew. For all I know, this whole thing, the coffee accident, the brilliant analysis, the protection, was an elaborate setup. You know that's not true." "Do I?" She moved closer, watching his face carefully. "Tell me, Ethan. When you applied for this job, did you know Kane was targeting my company?" His hesitation was answer enough. "Get out," she said quietly. "Get out before I call security myself." Ethan looked like he wanted to argue, to fight, to do something other than accept defeat. Instead, he straightened his shoulders and walked toward the door. "This isn't over," he said without turning around. "Kane won't stop because I'm gone. If anything, he'll escalate. Then I'll handle it myself. You don't understand what you're dealing with." Sophia's temper finally snapped. "I understand perfectly. I'm dealing with corporate raiders, family betrayal, and supernatural politics I never asked to be part of. What I don't understand is why I ever trusted you." Ethan paused at the door, his hand on the handle. "Because you saw something in me that I'd forgotten existed. Something worth protecting." He looked back at her, his eyes holding more pain than anger. "I'll be gone within the hour. But Sophia, be careful. Kane doesn't forgive, and he doesn't forget." After he left, Sophia sank into her chair and allowed herself exactly 5 minutes to feel the loss. Then she picked up her phone and started making calls. If she was going to face Kane alone, she needed every advantage she could get. Victor Kane's office occupied the top 3 floors of the Kane Industries building, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered panoramic views of the city. When Sophia arrived Tuesday afternoon, she felt like she was walking into the wolf's den, literally. Kane received her in a conference room decorated with modern art and what looked like genuine medieval weapons. He sat at the head of a massive table, flanked by two executives who watched her with predatory intensity. "Ms. Chen," Kane rose as she entered, his smile perfectly polished and completely cold. "How delightful that you accepted my invitation." "Your invitation sounded more like a summons," Sophia replied, taking the seat across from him without waiting to be asked. "Did it? How rude of me." Kane settled back into his chair, studying her with those unsettling pale eyes. "I trust you've had time to reconsider your position regarding our mutual interests." "I've had time to consult with my lawyers. Hostile takeovers have very specific legal requirements, Mr. Kane." "Requirements you haven't met?" Kane's smile widened, showing teeth that seemed too sharp. "Legal requirements? How charmingly naive." He gestured to one of his executives, who slid a tablet across the table to Sophia. "I think you'll find the legal landscape has shifted in the past 48 hours. Sophia looked at the screen, her blood turning to ice. Financial records showed massive stock purchases, proxy votes, and board positions that gave Kane effective control of 38% of her company. Combined with her family's holdings, he was within striking distance of a majority stake. "Impressive, isn't it?" Kane leaned forward, his voice taking on a hypnotic quality. "Your cousin Marcus has been extraordinarily helpful. As has your Uncle William. Family loyalty is such a rare commodity these days." "What do you want?" Sophia asked, proud that her voice remained steady. "A simple business proposition. Sell me 51% of Chin Industries at fair market value, and I'll call off your family's takeover attempt. You'll retain operational control, continue as CEO, and your employees keep their jobs." Kane's eyes glittered. "Refuse, and I'll destroy everything you've built piece by piece." "And if I agree to this generous offer?" "You'll discover that working with Kane Industries can be quite profitable. We have resources that extend far beyond traditional business methods." Sophia caught the implication. Supernatural resources. Pack loyalty. Methods that gave Kane's companies advantages no human competitor could match. "I need time to consider." "You have until Friday," Kane interrupted. "The board vote is scheduled for 10 a.m. I do hope you'll make the right choice." Sophia stood, gathering her composure around her like armor. "Before I go, I'm curious about something. Your nephew, Ethan Stone. You mentioned he was supposed to be your inside man." Kane's expression darkened. "Ethan has always been disappointingly sentimental. I placed him at Chin Industries to gather intelligence and identify vulnerabilities. Instead, he developed an inconvenient attachment to his target." "His target?" "You, my dear. Though I suspect his feelings were genuine, which makes his betrayal all the more pathetic." Kane rose, moving around the table with fluid grace. "Did he tell you why he was exiled?" "He killed people. Not just people. Humans. 3 of them, to be precise." Kane stopped just close enough to make her skin crawl. "They were witnesses to a pack hunt who threatened to expose our existence. Ethan was ordered to eliminate them quietly. Instead, he lost control and tore them apart in a blood frenzy that left forensic evidence scattered across half a city block." Sophia kept her face carefully blank, though her stomach churned. "The pack spent considerable resources covering up his mistake," Kane continued. "Bribing officials, destroying evidence, silencing additional witnesses. When I ordered him to clean up his own mess by killing the investigating detective, he refused. Said he was done with murder." Kane's laugh was soft and deadly. "So I exiled him, thinking isolation would teach him the value of pack loyalty. Apparently, I was wrong. Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to understand exactly what kind of man you trusted with your life." Kane moved even closer, and Sophia caught the scent of something wild and dangerous. "And because I want you to know that when I'm done with you, there won't be enough left for him to save." Sophia left the Kane Industries building feeling like she'd been swimming in sewage. Every survival instinct she possessed screamed at her to run, to liquidate her assets and disappear somewhere Kane's influence couldn't reach. Instead, she went back to her office and started planning a war. The evidence Ethan had helped her gather was still valid, whatever his motives had been for collecting it. Her cousin's embezzlement, her uncle's secret deals with Kane, the shell companies, all of it could be used to expose their conspiracy. If she moved fast enough, she might be able to turn her own board against the takeover. She spent the next 3 days building her case, working 18-hour days fueled by coffee and pure fury. By Thursday night, she had enough evidence to destroy Marcus's reputation and possibly send him to prison. She also had a growing certainty that she was being watched. The emergency board meeting was called for Thursday at 7 p.m., after normal business hours when the building would be mostly empty. Sophia had chosen the timing deliberately. She wanted privacy for what was essentially a family execution. The conference room felt like a battlefield as the 12 board members filed in. Marcus arrived with his usual politician's smile, but Sophia caught the nervous tick in his left eye. Uncle William looked older than she remembered, his face drawn with what might have been guilt or fear. "Thank you all for coming," Sophia began, standing at the head of the table with a folder full of documents. "I've called this meeting to address serious allegations of financial impropriety and breach of fiduciary duty." Marcus's smile faltered. "Sophia, if this is about our disagreement regarding company direction. This is about embezzlement." Sophia opened the folder, distributing copies of bank records and transaction logs. Over the past 8 months, someone has been using shell companies to siphon money from Chin Industries accounts. The total amount exceeds $12 million. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Uncle William went pale, but Marcus recovered quickly. "These are serious allegations," he said, his voice steady. "Do you have proof of who's responsible?" "I do." Sophia pulled up a presentation on the conference room screen. The money was transferred to accounts controlled by Meridian Holdings, a company registered in the Cayman Islands. Meridian Holdings is owned by Chin Enterprises, which is registered to one Marcus Chin. The silence was deafening. Marcus's face cycled through shock, anger, and calculation before settling on cold fury. "You've been investigating your own family?" "I've been protecting my company from thieves." Sophia turned to address the full board. "I'm recommending immediate termination of Marcus Chen from all positions within Chin Industries, and I'm turning this evidence over to the FBI for criminal investigation." "You sanctimonious bitch," Marcus snarled, his politician's mask finally slipping. "You think you're so perfect, so much better than the rest of us. But you're nothing but a hypocrite." "Marcus," Uncle William tried to intervene. "No," Marcus stood, pointing an accusatory finger at Sophia. "You want to talk about deception? Let's talk about your new boyfriend, Ethan Stone. Did you bother to tell the board that you've been sleeping with Victor Kane's nephew?" The room went silent. Sophia felt her carefully constructed case crumbling around her. "That's not. Ethan Stone is a Kane," Marcus continued, his voice rising. "He's been feeding information to our biggest competitor while playing house with our CEO. Either Sophia knew about it, which makes her complicit in corporate espionage, or she didn't know, which makes her incompetent." Board member after board member turned to stare at Sophia. She could see the doubt creeping into their faces, the questions about her judgment and leadership. "The relationship with Mr. Stone was professional," she said, knowing how weak it sounded. "And he's no longer employed by this company." "Professional?" Marcus laughed harshly. "He's been living in your guest house for weeks. The whole office knows you've been working late together, taking private dinners, acting like teenagers with a crush." He turned to the board. "How can we trust her judgment about anything when she's been compromised by a Kane operative?" Uncle William cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Sophia, perhaps you should consider taking a leave of absence while we investigate these complications." "A leave of absence?" Sophia's voice was deadly quiet. "From the company I built?" "It's temporary," another board member said quickly. "Just until we can sort out the implications of this Kane connection." Sophia looked around the table, seeing the doubt and suspicion in every face. Even the members who'd supported her for years were wavering, uncertain about her judgment and leadership. Marcus sensed victory. I motion for a vote of no confidence in Sophia Chen's leadership, effective immediately. Seconded, Uncle William said quietly. The vote was 8-4 against her. Sophia gathered her papers with steady hands, her mind already calculating her next move. She'd lost this battle, but the war was far from over. This meeting is adjourned, she said, walking toward the door. I'll be in my office if anyone needs me. It was only after she left that she realized how fatal those words might prove to be. Sophia's penthouse was supposed to be a fortress. The building had state-of-the-art security, keycard access, and cameras monitoring every entrance. Her apartment occupied the entire top floor, with bulletproof windows and a panic room that could withstand anything short of military assault. None of it mattered when the enemy could scale 30 stories of glass and steel. She was in her home office, working on legal strategies to regain control of her company, when the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. Sophia reached for her phone to call security, but the sound of breaking glass from her living room made her freeze. The crash was followed by silence so complete she could hear her own heartbeat. Moving carefully, she made her way toward the panic room, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. She was halfway there when she heard them, footsteps that were too quiet, too measured to be human. The first assassin came around the corner low and fast, moving with inhuman speed. Sophia had a split second to register glowing yellow eyes and elongated canines before he lunged. She threw herself sideways, grabbing a letter opener from her desk and slashing wildly. The blade caught him across the face, drawing a line of blood and an inhuman snarl. He backhanded her with enough force to send her sprawling across the floor. The boss wants her alive, a voice said from the darkness. But he didn't say undamaged. Sophia scrambled toward the panic room, but another figure blocked her path. This one was larger, with arms covered in coarse hair and fingers that ended in claws. She was trapped. The window behind her exploded inward in a shower of glass and twisted metal. Through the opening came something that made her attackers look like house pets, a massive wolf with silver-tipped black fur and eyes like molten gold. Ethan. He hit the first assassin with the force of a freight train, jaws clamping down on the man's throat and shaking him like a rag doll. The sound of breaking bones was audible even over the snarls and screams. The second assassin tried to run, but Ethan was faster. He took the man down in the hallway, and Sophia heard sounds she'd never be able to forget, wet, tearing noises that spoke of violence beyond human comprehension. When the apartment fell silent, Ethan padded back into the office, his massive form filling the doorway. Blood matted his fur, and his golden eyes held a wildness that made her primitive brain scream warnings about apex predators. Then he shifted. The transformation was fluid, impossible, and strangely beautiful. Fur receded, bones reformed, and within seconds Ethan stood before her in human form, naked and covered in blood that wasn't his own. "Are you hurt?" His voice was hoarse, strained by the change. Sophia shook her head, not trusting herself to speak. Ethan moved toward her slowly, like he was approaching a spooked animal. "Sophia, we need to go. Kane will send more when these two don't report back." "You came," she whispered. "I never left." He knelt beside her, his hands gentle despite the violence she'd just witnessed. "I've been watching your building since Monday, waiting for exactly this." "How did you know?" Ethan's expression darkened. "Because I know Kane. He doesn't just want your company, he wants you dead. You've seen too much of his world, heard too many secrets. The business deal was always a lie." Sophia felt something cold settle in her stomach. "So even if I'd agreed to sell, you'd have had an accident within a week." She closed her eyes, the full scope of her situation finally sinking in. She'd thought she was fighting a corporate battle, but Kane had been planning murder from the beginning. "I need clothes," Ethan said quietly. "And you need to pack light. We can't stay here." 20 minutes later, they were in Ethan's car, speeding through the city toward an unknown destination. Sophia had thrown together a bag with essentials, while Ethan had appropriated clothes from her guest house and made several phone calls in a language she didn't recognize. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Safe house. Pack property, but it's been abandoned for years. Kane doesn't know about it." They drove in silence for another 10 minutes before Sophia finally asked the question that had been burning in her throat. "The people you killed. Kane said you lost control." Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I was 22 and stupid. The pack had been hunting in national forest land, and 3 college kids saw us in wolf form. Kane ordered me to eliminate them quietly, make it look like an accident. But you didn't. I tried to scare them into leaving town instead. Told them they'd imagined what they saw, that they needed to forget about it and never come back." Ethan's voice was hollow. "They laughed at me. Called me crazy. Said they were going to post the pictures online, make money selling the story to tabloids." Sophia waited, sensing there was more. "I snapped," Ethan continued. "The wolf took over, and when I came back to myself, they were dead. Torn apart. The crime scene looked like something from a horror movie. And the detective Kane wanted you to kill?" She was getting too close to the truth. "Found DNA evidence that didn't match any known animal. Kane said she had to die to protect the pack." Ethan glanced at Sophia, his eyes haunted. "I couldn't do it. I told Kane I was done with murder, that I'd rather die than kill another innocent person. So he exiled you." "Exile was mercy. Most packs would have executed me for disobedience." Sophia processed this, weighing the man she'd come to know against the killer Kane had described. "Do you regret it? Refusing to kill the detective?" Ethan was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, he said, "Every day. Because if I'd been strong enough to leave the pack sooner, those 3 kids would still be alive." The safe house turned out to be a cabin nestled deep in state forest land, miles from the nearest neighbor. It was small but clean, with solar panels and a well that suggested someone had maintained it even if they hadn't lived there. "It belonged to my father's pack," Ethan explained as he checked the security system. "Before Kane took over and drove them out." Inside, the cabin was spartanly furnished but comfortable. Sophia set her bag down and immediately noticed the medical supplies laid out on the kitchen table. "You're bleeding," she said, noting the cuts on Ethan's arms and chest. "It's nothing serious. Sit down." When he hesitated, she pushed him toward a chair. "I've seen you naked and covered in blood, Ethan. I think we're past the point of false modesty." She cleaned his wounds with efficient movements, noting how quickly they seemed to be healing. His skin was warm under her fingers, and she found herself lingering over touches that should have been purely medical. "Sophia," Ethan's voice was rough. She looked up to find him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. They were inches apart, her hands still on his chest, his eyes dark with something that had nothing to do with pain. "We shouldn't," she whispered, even as she leaned closer. "No," he agreed, his hands coming up to frame her face. "We shouldn't." The kiss was inevitable, desperate, fueled by adrenaline and the knowledge that they might not have another chance. Sophia melted into him, letting herself feel everything she'd been suppressing, the attraction, the need, the terrifying certainty that she was falling in love with a man who might get her killed. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "I won't hurt you," he said quietly. "I swear to you, Sophia, I will never hurt you. You already have." The words slipped out before she could stop them. "When you lied to me. When you made me fall for you without telling me the truth." Ethan's eyes closed in pain. "I know. And I'll spend the rest of my life making up for it, if you'll let me." Sophia pulled back, putting distance between them. "I don't know if I can trust you again." "Then let me earn it." Ethan stood, moving to the window to check the perimeter. "Help me destroy Kane, and I'll prove that you matter more to me than pack loyalty or family or anything else in this world." Sophia studied his profile, seeing the determination in every line of his body. "What are you proposing?" "An alliance. You use your corporate resources and business connections. I use my knowledge of Kane's pack and supernatural abilities. He turned to face her, his expression fierce. Together, we take him down completely. Destroy his business empire, scatter his pack, and make sure he can never threaten you or anyone else again. And after that? After that, you decide if what we have is worth fighting for. Sophia was quiet for a long moment, weighing options and consequences. Finally, she nodded. All right, she said. Partners. Partners, Ethan agreed. But as they shook hands on their alliance, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that she was making a deal that would change everything, and that there was no going back from what they were about to unleash. Chapter 4. The war room looked like something from a spy thriller. Sophia had transformed the cabin's main room into a command center, with laptops, legal documents, and financial records spread across every surface. A whiteboard covered one wall, showing Kane Industries' corporate structure in red ink, with supernatural pack hierarchies sketched alongside in blue. Kane's real money doesn't come from legitimate business, Ethan said, adding another name to the pack hierarchy. The corporate empire is just a front. His actual wealth comes from underground fighting rings. Sophia looked up from her laptop, where she'd been tracing shell companies. Fighting rings? Supernatural cage matches. Werewolves, vampires, occasionally other creatures, all fighting for the entertainment of wealthy humans who pay millions to watch. Ethan's expression was grim. Kane takes a cut of every bet, controls the fighters through pack bonds, and eliminates anyone who threatens to expose the operation. How do you know all this? Because I was supposed to be one of his fighters before I refused. Ethan pointed to a network of companies on the whiteboard. These subsidiaries? They're fronts for the fight clubs. The security consulting firms provide muscle, the entertainment venues host the matches, and the medical research companies dispose of bodies when fights go too far. Sophia felt sick. How many people die? Enough that Kane has a private crematorium and a coroner on his payroll. She stared at the web of corruption they were mapping, feeling the scope of their enemy's reach. We're going to need help. I can't take down an operation this large with just corporate lawyers. I know someone who might be willing to talk, Ethan said carefully. But you're not going to like it. Before he could explain, his phone rang. Ethan glanced at the caller ID and frowned. Miranda? Sophia could hear the woman's voice through the phone, though not the words. Ethan's expression shifted from confusion to shock to something approaching hope. Where? He asked. Are you sure you weren't followed? A pause. All right. 1 hour. He hung up and turned to Sophia. Miranda wants to meet. She says she has information about Kane that could help us. It's a trap. Maybe. But she sounded desperate. And she mentioned something about my father's death. They met Miranda at a truck stop 20 miles from the cabin, in a diner that smelled of grease and desperation. She sat in a corner booth, her usually perfect appearance marred by dark circles under her eyes and hands that shook when she reached for her coffee cup. Ethan, she said as they approached. And Ms. Chen. Thank you for coming. Sophia slid into the booth across from her, studying the woman who'd humiliated Ethan at the charity function. Up close, Miranda looked older, more fragile, with the haunted expression of someone living in constant fear. What do you want? Sophia asked bluntly. Miranda's laugh was bitter. Freedom. Revenge. A chance to sleep without nightmares. She looked directly at Ethan. Your father didn't die in a car accident. Ethan went very still. What? Victor killed him. Shot him in the head and made it look like he lost control on a mountain road. Miranda's voice was steady, but tears tracked down her cheeks. James was planning to leave the pack, to take you and disappear. Victor couldn't allow that. He needed your father's business connections and your potential as a fighter. You're lying, Ethan said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Think about it. Your father was an expert driver who knew those mountain roads better than anyone. He'd driven them hundreds of times, in worse weather than that night. Miranda pulled a photograph from her purse, sliding it across the table. Victor kept this as a trophy. The photo showed a younger Victor Kane standing next to a car that had obviously been in an accident. But Kane was smiling, and there was no blood on his clothes despite the carnage. After the funeral, Victor told me I had two choices, Miranda continued. Marry him and become his pack's inside source in human society, or join James in the ground. She wiped her eyes with a napkin. I chose to live. I've regretted it every day since. Sophia watched Ethan's face cycle through grief, rage, and something approaching murder. Why are you telling us this now? Because Victor's planning something big. Something that involves both of you. Miranda leaned forward, lowering her voice. He's been moving large amounts of money offshore, liquidating assets that aren't tied to his core businesses. And he's been recruiting new fighters, younger, stronger, more vicious than the ones he usually uses. For what? A tournament. Winner take all, with the prize being alpha status over all supernatural fight clubs on the West Coast. Miranda's eyes found Ethan's. He's been bragging that he's going to use it to demonstrate pack supremacy, to show that werewolves are the apex predators of the supernatural world. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was deadly calm. What do you need from us? Protection. Evidence that will hold up in human courts. And a guarantee that when this is over, Victor Kane will never be able to hurt anyone again. Miranda reached into her purse again, pulling out a thick envelope. Financial records from the fight clubs. Medical reports from the illegal experiments he's been conducting on captured supernatural creatures. And video evidence of at least 6 murders. Sophia took the envelope, feeling its weight. Why should we trust you? Because I loved James Stone more than I've ever loved anything in my life. And because Victor Kane destroyed that love for his own amusement. Miranda's voice was fierce now, all traces of fragility gone. I want him to pay for every life he's taken, every family he's destroyed, every person he's forced to bow to his will. If we do this, Ethan said slowly, Kane will know you helped us. He'll kill you. He's going to kill me anyway, Miranda replied. I've outlived my usefulness, and I know too much. At least this way, my death might mean something. Back at the cabin, Sophia spread Miranda's evidence across the kitchen table while Ethan paced like a caged animal. The documents painted a picture of systematic brutality that made her stomach turn, medical experiments that tortured supernatural creatures in the name of research, fight clubs where participants were forced to battle to the death, financial records showing profits in the hundreds of millions. This is enough to bring down his entire operation, she said, looking up from a particularly damning set of bank records. If we can get it to the right people. The right people won't believe it, Ethan replied. Half of this evidence requires accepting that supernatural creatures exist. The other half implicates some of the most powerful people in the state. Then we make them believe it. Sophia pulled up her laptop, her fingers flying over the keys. We don't dump everything at once. We start small, financial irregularities, health code violations, suspicious deaths that look like accidents. We build a case that forces them to investigate deeper. And while they're investigating, Kane will be eliminating witnesses and destroying evidence. Not if we move fast enough. Sophia turned the laptop toward him, showing a timeline she'd constructed. 3 weeks. We hit him with everything we have in 3 weeks, criminal charges, civil lawsuits, regulatory investigations, and media exposure all at the same time. He won't be able to cover all the bases. Ethan studied the timeline, his expression thoughtful. It could work. But we'll need more than just evidence. We'll need allies. I have a list of companies Kane has destroyed, families he's bankrupted, employees he's blacklisted. Some of them will want revenge badly enough to risk helping us. And I know supernatural creatures who've escaped his fight clubs, pack members who hate what he's turned the werewolf community into. Ethan moved to stand behind her chair, his presence warm and reassuring. We're actually going to do this, aren't we? We're going to destroy him, Sophia confirmed. Completely. Over the next week, they fell into a rhythm of planning and preparation that felt strangely domestic. Sophia worked the phones during the day, reaching out to former Kane victims and building a coalition of allies willing to testify against him. Ethan disappeared for hours at a time, meeting with supernatural contacts and gathering intelligence about Kane's current operations. In the evenings, they shared simple dinners and compared notes, their professional partnership slowly deepening into something more personal. "Tell me about your father," Sophia said one night as they cleaned dishes together. Ethan was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, he said, "He was the strongest man I knew, but he hated violence. Said being a werewolf didn't give him the right to be a monster. He dried a plate with unnecessary force. He tried to teach me that strength should be used to protect people, not dominate them." Sounds like he succeeded. Did he? "I killed 3 innocent people, Sophia. I don't know if that makes me a protector or a monster." She turned to face him, studying his profile in the dim light. Monsters don't feel guilt about their actions. They don't spend years trying to atone for their mistakes. They don't sacrifice their own safety to protect someone else. "Is that what you think I'm doing? Protecting you? Aren't you?" Ethan set down the towel and turned to face her fully. "I'm trying to. But every day I'm here puts you in more danger. Kane knows I care about you, which makes you a target. Eventually, he's going to force me to choose between your safety and stopping him. Then we'd better stop him first." The smile he gave her was small but genuine. "Has anyone ever told you you're remarkably stubborn?" "Once or twice." They were standing close now, close enough that she could see flecks of gold in his green eyes, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his skin. When he reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, she didn't pull away. "Sophia," he said quietly. "I need you to know, whatever happens, these past weeks with you have been the best of my life." Before she could respond, her phone rang with news that changed everything. "Miss Chen?" The voice belonged to her assistant Rebecca. "I'm sorry to call so late, but you need to know, Henderson Industries accepted Kane's buyout offer. They're selling to him instead of partnering with us." Sophia felt cold dread pool in her stomach. Henderson Industries was a small tech company that Kane had been trying to acquire for months. Their partnership with Chen Industries was supposed to protect them from a hostile takeover. When? The deal was announced an hour ago. "Ms. Chen, there's more. Henderson's CEO, Michael Torres, was found dead in his apartment this morning. The police are calling it a suicide." Sophia met Ethan's eyes, seeing her own horror reflected there. Kane had murdered Torres and forced the sale through other means. "Rebecca, I need you to call emergency meetings with all our subsidiary partners. Tonight if possible. And get our legal team working on anti-takeover protections for everyone on our alliance list." "Yes ma'am." "Should I?" "And Rebecca? Be very careful who you trust. Kane has people everywhere." After she hung up, Ethan pulled her into his arms. "I'm sorry. We knew he'd retaliate. We just didn't know how fast he'd move." Sophia buried her face in his chest, breathing in his scent. "How many more people are going to die because I decided to fight him? How many more will die if you don't?" Ethan's voice was fierce. "Kane doesn't just target you, Sophia. He's been destroying lives for years. At least now someone's fighting back." She pulled back to look at him, seeing the conviction in his face. "You really believe that?" "I believe in you. I believe in what we're doing." His hands framed her face gently. "And I believe that together, we're going to save a lot of people." The kiss was inevitable, born of shared purpose and desperate hope. This time, Sophia didn't pull away. She melted into him, letting herself feel everything she'd been holding back: desire, trust, and the terrifying certainty that she was falling in love with this man. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "We saved Henderson's employees," he said quietly. 300 people who won't lose their jobs because of Kane's greed. "How?" While you were on the phone with Rebecca, I called some old contacts. Henderson's key employees are being offered positions with companies that Kane can't touch. Their research data is being transferred to secure servers. By morning, Henderson Industries will be a shell company with nothing valuable left to steal. Sophia stared at him in amazement. You did that in 5 minutes? I had good motivation. What kind of motivation? Watching the woman I love refuse to back down from a fight she could lose. The words slipped out before he could stop them, and Ethan's eyes widened in shock at his own confession. Sophia felt her heart stop, restart, and begin beating double time. Ethan. I know it's too soon. I know you don't trust me completely yet. But I needed you to know. She silenced him with another kiss, this one fierce and demanding. When they broke apart, she was smiling. For the record, she said, I love you too. The call came at 3 in the morning, jolting them both awake. Ethan answered with a growl that was more wolf than human. Stone. The voice on the other end was rough, speaking in that same language Sophia had heard him use before. The conversation was brief but intense, and she watched Ethan's expression grow increasingly grim. What is it? She asked when he hung up. Pack business. Members of my father's old pack want to meet. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, his shoulders tense. They want to challenge Kane for Alpha status, but they need me to do it. Why you? Because I'm James Stone's son. My father was Beta before Kane killed him, which gives me a legitimate claim to challenge for pack leadership. Ethan scrubbed his hands over his face. If I win, I'd control Kane's entire supernatural network. All his fighters, his contacts, his supernatural revenue streams. Sophia could see the appeal, but something cold twisted in her stomach. What's the catch? I'd have to leave. Tonight. The challenge has to be issued on the full moon, which is tomorrow night. And once I challenge Kane, he'll know where I am. He'll use that knowledge to find you. So we find somewhere else for me to hide. Sophia, you don't understand. If I leave to challenge Kane, I might not come back. Alpha challenges are fights to the death. And even if I win, leading a pack means committing to that world completely. I might not be able to return to the human world, to this life we're building. She was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. What do you want to do? I want to stay here with you. I want to finish what we started and build a life that doesn't involve supernatural politics or pack hierarchies. Ethan turned to face her, his eyes haunted. But if I don't do this, Kane will keep hunting you. He'll keep killing innocent people. And eventually, our human methods won't be enough to stop him. Sophia reached for his hand, intertwining their fingers. Then you have to go. Sophia. You have to go, she repeated firmly. Because you're right, we can't stop Kane completely through human means. He has too many supernatural resources, too many ways to strike back that we can't defend against. She squeezed his hand. But promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll come back. Promise me this isn't goodbye. Ethan brought her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. I promise I'll come back to you. Whatever it takes. The poisoning started the next morning. Sophia was in her temporary office, a secure location Ethan had arranged before leaving at dawn, when the calls started coming in. First Rebecca, then her head of security, then the plant manager, all reporting the same thing: employees at Chin Industries' main facility were getting sick. How many? Sophia asked, already pulling up building schematics on her laptop. 37 so far, Rebecca reported. Nausea, vomiting, some respiratory distress. The paramedics think it might be something in the water system. Sophia felt ice form in her veins. Evacuate the building. Now. All employees out, and call in hazmat teams to test everything. Ms. Chen, the news crews are already here. They're saying it's criminal negligence, that Chin Industries cut corners on safety protocols. It's not negligence, it's sabotage. Sophia was already grabbing her keys. Rebecca, I need you to call our crisis management team and our lawyers. This is going to get ugly fast. The scene at Chin Industries was chaos. News vans lined the street, employees sat in ambulances receiving treatment, and protesters had already gathered with signs demanding corporate accountability. Marcus stood in front of the building, giving an interview to a news crew. This is exactly what the board was afraid of, he was saying. Sophia Chen's erratic leadership and poor judgment have created a culture of negligence that puts innocent people at risk. Sophia watched from her car, her hands clenched on the steering wheel. Kane was behind this, she knew it with absolute certainty. But he'd been clever enough to make it look like corporate incompetence rather than criminal sabotage. Her phone rang. An unknown number. Ms. Chen. This is David Chen. I think we need to talk. David Chen, her mentor, the man who'd taught her everything about running a business. They weren't related, but he'd been like a father to her since her own father's death. David, where are you? I've been trying to reach you for days. I'm safe. For now. But Ms. Chen, I'm afraid I have some very bad news. The line went dead. When her phone rang again, it was a different voice, cold, cultured, and utterly terrifying. Ms. Chen. Victor Kane. I believe you've been looking for Mr. David Chen. What do you want? A simple trade. You sign over 51% of Chin Industries to me, and Mr. Chen lives to see another birthday. You have until midnight to decide. If you hurt him, the choice is yours, my dear. Your company, or his life. I do hope you'll make the right decision. Sophia stared at her phone after Kane hung up, her mind racing. David Chen was the closest thing to family she had left, the man who'd believed in her when everyone else saw only a young woman in over her head. But signing over her company would give Kane control of everything she'd built, everything her employees depended on. It would also sign death warrants for everyone who'd helped her fight him. Her hand moved instinctively to her stomach, where she'd been feeling strange flutters for the past few days. The nausea she'd attributed to stress, the exhaustion she'd blamed on their hectic schedule. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She was pregnant. Sophia sat in her car outside the building that had been her life's work, watching emergency crews clean up Kane's latest attack, and tried to process the impossible. She was carrying Ethan's child, and he was gone, possibly forever, to fight a battle that might save them all or leave her completely alone. The future she'd been building with him suddenly felt impossibly fragile, balanced on the edge of a war that was about to consume everything she'd ever cared about. But first, she had to save David Chen. And then she had to decide if she was strong enough to fight Kane alone while protecting the life growing inside her. Chapter 5. The ancient rules of pack challenge hadn't changed in centuries. Ethan stood at the edge of Kane's territory, a sprawling industrial complex that housed both legitimate businesses and the underground fight clubs that generated Kane's real wealth. The full moon hung overhead like a spotlight, and he could feel the pull of the change beneath his skin. Behind him, 3 members of his father's old pack waited in human form, their expressions grim. They'd risked everything to support his challenge, knowing that failure meant death for all of them. "You sure about this?" asked Marcus Webb, his father's former lieutenant. "Kane's been Alpha for 15 years. He's not going to fight fair." Ethan checked the silver knife at his belt, the traditional weapon used to mark the beginning and end of a challenge. "He's never fought fair. That's why he needs to be stopped." "And the human female?" "Chen. She can take care of herself." Ethan's voice was steady, but his heart clenched at the thought of leaving Sophia alone. Right now, David Chen's life depends on Kane being distracted by this challenge. They approached the main building in formation, Ethan leading with the others flanking him. Security cameras tracked their movement, but no one tried to stop them. Kane would want witnesses to Ethan's death. It would cement his authority over any other potential challengers. The lobby was filled with Kane's inner circle, both human and supernatural. They formed a corridor leading to the elevator bank, their faces showing everything from curiosity to bloodthirsty anticipation. Kane waited on the top floor, in what had once been a corporate boardroom but now served as a modern throne room. He stood behind a massive desk made from a single piece of black marble, wearing a perfectly tailored suit that couldn't hide the predatory power beneath. "Nephew," Kane said, his voice carrying across the room. "How delightfully unexpected. Though I did hear about your recent employment troubles." "I invoke the right of challenge," Ethan replied formally, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "I claim the right to contest your leadership of this pack." Murmurs rippled through the assembled crowd. Some sounded excited, others nervous. Pack challenges were rare enough to be events, especially when the challenger was the previous Alpha's son. Kane's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "On what grounds?" "Murder of a Pack Beta. Corruption of Pack laws. Bringing dishonor to our people through criminal enterprise." Ethan stepped forward, his hand moving to the silver knife. "I challenge you for the right to lead." "Accepted." Kane's smile widened. "Though I'm afraid the terms have evolved since your father's time." Before Ethan could ask what he meant, the floor around him erupted with silver-lined steel bars, forming a cage that trapped him in the center of the room. The metal burned where it touched his skin, and he could feel his werewolf strength being sapped by the proximity to so much silver. "You see," Kane continued conversationally, "a traditional challenge seems so limited. Just two wolves fighting for dominance. Where's the artistry in that?" He gestured to several large monitors that descended from the ceiling, each showing different views of Chen Industries' corporate headquarters. "Instead, we're going to have a more comprehensive contest." Ethan's blood turned to ice as he saw Sophia on one of the screens, standing in what looked like an emergency board meeting. "The rules are simple," Kane said. "You fight me for pack leadership while your beloved Ms. Chen fights for her company. If you win and she loses, you become alpha of a pack with no financial resources. If she wins and you lose, well, she'll be a very wealthy widow." Kane's laugh was soft and deadly. "Of course, there's always the possibility that you both lose." The cage began to descend through the floor, carrying Ethan toward the basement levels where Kane's fight clubs operated. Through the bars, he could see Kane following, already beginning to shed his human form. "You bastard," Ethan snarled, gripping the silver bars despite the pain. "This has nothing to do with her. Doesn't it?" Kane's voice was changing, becoming rougher as his transformation began. "She's carrying your child, nephew. Did you think I wouldn't be able to smell it on you? That child represents the next generation of pack leadership, assuming either of you lives long enough to see it born." 300 miles away, Sophia faced her own battle. The emergency board meeting had been called for 8 p.m., ostensibly to address the ongoing crisis at Chen Industries. But Sophia knew it was really about removing her from power while she was weakened by the poisoning incident and Kane's ultimatum. She sat at the head of the conference table, facing 12 board members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Marcus sat at the far end, his expression smug with anticipated victory. "The situation has become untenable," Uncle William was saying, his voice heavy with false regret. "The poisoning incident, the negative media coverage, the ongoing investigations. The board has lost confidence in current leadership." "Current leadership," Sophia repeated calmly, "being me." "You have to understand our position," another board member interjected. "Your association with the Kane family, the security breaches, the operational failures." "The operational failures," Sophia interrupted, "were the result of criminal sabotage by Victor Kane. The same Victor Kane who's been systematically trying to destroy this company for months." She stood, moving to activate the room's presentation system. For the past 6 hours, while pretending to negotiate for David Chen's life, she'd been orchestrating the most complex financial attack of her career. "What you're seeing," she said as documents filled the screen, "is evidence of Kane Industries' criminal enterprise. Money laundering, racketeering, conspiracy to commit murder. I've shared this information with the FBI, the SEC, and the IRS." Marcus's face went pale. "Sophia, what have you done?" "I've done what you never had the backbone to do, I've fought back." She clicked to the next slide, showing real-time stock prices. As of 20 minutes ago, Kane Industries stock has dropped 40%. Every major investor is pulling out, and 3 separate federal agencies have frozen his assets pending investigation. She'd used every contact she had, called in every favor, and leveraged every piece of evidence Miranda had provided. The attack was surgical, precise, and devastating. You've also triggered investigations into Chin Industries, Uncle William pointed out. Our own stock price is falling. Temporarily. But Kane Industries won't recover from this. Sophia moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. I've also been in contact with the CEOs of 17 companies that Kane has targeted over the past 5 years. They're pooling resources to file a massive class action lawsuit against Kane Industries and any company that's aided his criminal enterprise. The implication was clear: anyone who'd helped Kane target Chin Industries would be included in that lawsuit. This is madness, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. You're destroying legitimate businesses to pursue some personal vendetta. I'm destroying a criminal organization that's been terrorizing the business community for years. Sophia turned back to face the board. The question is whether Chin Industries is going to be part of the solution or part of the problem. Before anyone could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Miranda. It's starting. Kane and Ethan are fighting. Time for phase 2. Sophia excused herself, stepping into the hallway to call Miranda back. How is he? She asked immediately. Alive, for now. But Kane's not fighting fair. The entire setup is designed to weaken Ethan while giving Kane every advantage. Miranda's voice was tense. Are you ready for your part? The financial attack is already in motion. Kane's empire is crumbling. Sophia paused, then made a decision. Miranda, there's something you need to know. I'm pregnant. The silence on the other end stretched so long that Sophia wondered if the call had been dropped. Pregnant, Miranda finally repeated. With Ethan's child. Yes. This changes everything. If Kane's pack learns about the pregnancy, they'll see the child as a threat to pack stability. They'll try to eliminate both of you to prevent future challenges to whoever becomes the next Alpha. Then we'd better make sure Kane doesn't survive this challenge. Actually, Miranda said, her voice taking on a strange quality, I have a better idea. What if neither of them survived? Something cold crawled up Sophia's spine. What do you mean? Think about it, Sophia. Ethan may be better than Kane, but he's still a werewolf. Still part of a world that sees humans as prey. Do you really want to raise a child in that environment? Miranda's voice became persuasive, almost hypnotic. But if both Alpha candidates die in the challenge, the pack will splinter. Kane's criminal empire will collapse completely, and you'll be free to raise your child in the human world. You're talking about murdering Ethan. I'm talking about freeing you from a life of looking over your shoulder, wondering when pack politics will threaten your family again. Miranda paused. I can end this tonight, Sophia. All of it. Kane, Ethan, the supernatural threat to your child. All you have to do is not interfere. Sophia felt sick. You've been planning this from the beginning. I've been planning to be free. Kane destroyed my life, killed the man I loved, and forced me into a living hell. If eliminating his nephew gives me control over his empire, then that's a price I'm willing to pay. And if I refuse to let you murder the father of my child? Then you'll have to choose between protecting Ethan and protecting your company. Because while you're distracted by pack politics, Marcus is calling for another vote of no confidence. This time, he has the proxies to win. The line went dead, leaving Sophia staring at her phone in horror. Miranda had been playing a longer game than any of them realized. She didn't just want Kane dead, she wanted to control his entire empire. And she was willing to kill Ethan to get it. In the basement fight club, Ethan circled Kane in a ring surrounded by howling pack members and wealthy humans who'd paid millions to watch 2 alphas fight to the death. Both men had partially transformed, more than human but not quite wolf. Kane was larger, more experienced, and fighting on home territory with a crowd that wanted to see him win. But Ethan was younger, faster, and fueled by desperation to return to Sophia. Kane's first attack was a feint designed to test Ethan's reflexes. The older wolf's claws raked across Ethan's ribs, drawing blood and eliciting cheers from the crowd. "Tell me, nephew," Cain growled as they circled each other, "does your human female know about the child yet?" Ethan's concentration wavered for just a moment, long enough for Cain to land a devastating blow that sent him crashing into the silver-lined walls. The metal burned through his shirt, searing his skin and weakening his supernatural healing. "I can smell it on you," Cain continued, pressing his advantage. "The scent of pregnancy hormones, the protective instincts that make you sloppy." He lunged forward, going for Ethan's throat. "She'll make an excellent addition to my breeding program after you're dead." Rage exploded through Ethan's system, giving him strength he didn't know he possessed. He caught Cain's arm mid-strike, using the older wolf's momentum to throw him across the ring. "You'll never touch her," Ethan snarled, his canine teeth fully extended now. "Won't I?" Cain rolled to his feet, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. "Even if you win this challenge, my pack will never accept a half-human child as heir. They'll hunt her down and kill both her and the baby to preserve pack purity." The words hit Ethan like physical blows. He'd been so focused on defeating Cain that he hadn't considered what would happen afterward. Becoming Alpha would make Sophia and their child even bigger targets. Cain sensed his moment of doubt and attacked with renewed fury, his claws seeking vital organs. Ethan barely managed to dodge, feeling razor-sharp nails slice through the air inches from his heart. 3 floors above, Sophia walked back into the boardroom to find chaos. Marcus was on his feet, addressing the board with passionate intensity. "She's lost her mind. Attacking legitimate businesses, making wild accusations, putting all of our jobs at risk with her vendetta against Cain Industries." "The vote is 8-4, Uncle William announced as Sophia took her seat. "The board finds current leadership unfit to continue." "Unfit based on what evidence?" Sophia asked calmly. "Based on your increasingly erratic behavior, your compromised judgment regarding Cain family members, and your reckless financial attacks that threaten the stability of the entire company," Marcus replied. "Face it, Sophia. You're emotionally compromised and making decisions based on personal feelings rather than business logic." Sophia felt a wave of nausea wash over her, partly from pregnancy, partly from the stress of fighting on multiple fronts. She gripped the edge of the table, forcing herself to remain upright. "My decisions," she said carefully, "have exposed a criminal conspiracy, protected our employees from further attacks, and eliminated our biggest competitor. If that's emotional compromise, I'll take it over whatever passes for leadership in your world. Will you?" Marcus smiled coldly. "Because your emotional compromise is about to cost you everything." The conference room monitors flickered to life, showing the Fight Club basement where Ethan and Cain were locked in brutal combat. Sophia's hand instinctively moved to her stomach as she watched the man she loved dodge claws that could have disemboweled him. "Touching, isn't it?" Marcus's voice was mocking. "Your boyfriend fighting for his life while you play corporate games. Tell me, Sophia, if you had to choose between saving him and saving your company, which would you pick?" Before she could answer, another wave of nausea hit her, this one strong enough to double her over. She gripped the table, fighting to stay conscious as pain shot through her abdomen. "Ms. Chen?" One of the board members leaned forward in concern. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," she gasped, but even as she said it, she felt something warm and wet between her legs. Looking down, she saw spots of blood on her skirt. "You're bleeding," Uncle William said, his voice sharp with alarm. Marcus's expression shifted from smug to calculating. Stress-induced medical episode. Clear evidence of someone who's physically and emotionally unfit for leadership. He turned to address the full board. "I call for an immediate vote to remove Sophia Chen as CEO and appoint emergency leadership." "You can't," Sophia tried to stand but stumbled, the pain in her abdomen intensifying. "The vote is unanimous," Uncle William announced. Effective immediately, Sophia Chen is removed from all leadership positions within Chen Industries. As the words hit her, Sophia felt her world tilt. She was losing her company and possibly her pregnancy at the same time, while the father of her child fought for his life in a rigged battle 300 miles away. In the fight club, Ethan landed a devastating blow that sent Kane sprawling across the concrete floor. The older wolf was breathing hard, blood streaming from multiple wounds, but his eyes still held malicious intelligence. "You want to know the real joke?" Kane gasped, struggling to his feet. "Even if you kill me, you lose. Miranda's been playing all of us from the beginning." "What are you talking about?" "She's been feeding information to human law enforcement, building a case against both of us. Win or lose, you're going to prison for the murders you committed 5 years ago." Kane's laugh was wet with blood. "She wants my empire, but she wants it clean. No supernatural complications, no werewolf politics. Just money and power." Ethan felt the truth of Kane's words like ice in his veins. Miranda had been too helpful, too willing to provide evidence against Kane. She'd been planning to eliminate both Alpha candidates from the beginning. "And your precious Sophia?" Kane continued, swaying on his feet but still talking. "She's bleeding out in a boardroom right now, losing your child while her own family strips away everything she's built. All because she fell in love with a monster." The words sent Ethan into a berserker rage. He launched himself at Kane with everything he had, claws extended, canine teeth bared in a snarl that promised death. Kane tried to dodge, but he was too wounded, too slow. Ethan's claws found his throat, opening arteries in a spray of blood that painted the concrete floor. As Kane collapsed, dying but not yet dead, he used his last breath to deliver one final blow. "She's carrying your child," he called out loudly enough for every pack member in the room to hear. "The human female is pregnant with werewolf blood." The words hit the assembled crowd like an explosion. Murmurs of shock and outrage rippled through the pack members, and Ethan could see the calculation in their eyes. A half-human heir represented a threat to pack purity, a dilution of werewolf strength. "Kill them both," someone shouted from the crowd. "Before the child can be born." "Hunt them down," another voice agreed. "Eliminate the contamination." Ethan looked around the room, seeing bloodlust and hatred in dozens of faces. By defeating Kane, he'd won the right to be Alpha, but he'd also painted a target on Sophia and their unborn child that would never disappear. Kane's dying laugh followed him as he shifted to full wolf form and crashed through the nearest window, racing toward the woman he loved and the child he might have just doomed. Behind him, Miranda Stone stepped into the fight club, surveying the chaos with cold satisfaction. Kane was dead, Ethan was fleeing, and his pack was fracturing into violent factions. Soon, she'd be in control of an empire built on blood and fear. But first, she had to make sure there were no loose ends. No witnesses who could threaten her new position. No pregnant CEOs who knew too much about the supernatural world. 300 miles away, Sophia collapsed in the boardroom, blood pooling beneath her chair as her body rejected the stress of fighting a war on too many fronts. The last thing she saw before unconsciousness took her was Marcus's face, twisted with triumph and something that looked like genuine regret. When she woke up, if she woke up, everything she'd built would be gone, and the man she loved would be a fugitive with a price on his head. But the child they'd created together might still have a chance to survive, if Ethan could reach her in time. And if Miranda Stone's final gambit didn't kill them all. Chapter 6. The attack came at dawn. Sophia woke to the sound of glass breaking somewhere below her hospital room. Through the fog of pain medication and exhaustion, she heard something that made her blood freeze, inhuman snarls echoing through the corridors. She pressed the call button frantically, but no one came. The hospital's usual morning bustle had been replaced by an ominous silence broken only by the occasional scream. Kane's remaining pack had come to finish what their Alpha had started. Sophia struggled to sit up, her body protesting every movement. The doctors had managed to stop the bleeding, but they'd warned her that any stress could trigger another episode. The baby, her baby, was hanging on by a thread. The door to her room burst open, but instead of a nurse, 3 men in hospital scrubs entered. Their eyes glowed yellow in the dim light, and she could see elongated canines when they smiled. "Miss Chen," the largest one said, his voice a gravelly growl. "Alpha Kane sends his regards." "Kane's dead," Sophia replied, forcing steel into her voice despite her fear. Not dead. Healing. And very interested in making sure his bloodline doesn't get contaminated by human weakness. The werewolf stepped closer to her bed. Nothing personal, you understand. Just pack business. Before he could reach her, the window exploded inward. Through the shower of glass came a massive black wolf with silver markings, Ethan, in full werewolf form, moving with lethal grace. He landed between Sophia and her attackers, his hackles raised and lips pulled back in a snarl that promised violence. Behind him came 3 more wolves, all bearing the scent of pack loyalty and righteous fury. The fight was brutal and brief. Ethan's new pack moved with coordinated precision, cutting off escape routes and overwhelming Kane's assassins with superior tactics. Within minutes, the threat was neutralized, leaving Sophia's hospital room looking like a war zone. Ethan shifted back to human form, ignoring his own injuries as he rushed to her side. "Are you hurt? Is the baby?" "We're fine," Sophia said, though her hands shook as she reached for him. "How did you know?" "Miranda called me. Said Kane's followers were planning an attack." Ethan's expression darkened. "She wanted to make sure I got here in time to witness your death, not prevent it." As if summoned by her name, Miranda Stone appeared in the doorway. She was perfectly composed despite the carnage around her, wearing a pristine white coat that identified her as Dr. Miranda Stone. Apparently, she had hospital privileges. "How touching," Miranda said, stepping carefully around the bodies. The reunion of star-crossed lovers. She moved to Kane's bedside, checking his vital signs with professional efficiency. "Though I'm afraid it's going to be short-lived." "Miranda," Ethan growled, positioning himself protectively in front of Sophia's bed. "What are you doing here?" "Cleaning up loose ends." Miranda pulled a syringe from her coat pocket. "Victor is going to have an unfortunate reaction to his pain medication. Something about incompatible drug interactions." She looked up at them with cold satisfaction. "And then there's going to be a terrible accident involving a gas leak in the maternity ward. So tragic when these old hospitals have infrastructure problems." "You're insane," Sophia said. "I'm practical. With Victor dead and you eliminated, I inherit control of his empire without any supernatural complications." Miranda began preparing the injection. "Ethan will be too grief-stricken to challenge my authority, and his new pack will need guidance from someone who understands how to operate in both worlds." "You think I'd work with you after you murdered the woman I love?" Miranda's smile was patronizing. "You'll work with me because the alternative is watching your pack starve. Corporate empires require human connections, legal frameworks, financial expertise. Things I can provide and you cannot." Sophia watched this exchange with growing clarity. Miranda had orchestrated everything: Kane's downfall, the hospital attack, even Ethan's rescue. She wanted both of them dependent on her expertise, grateful for her intervention. "There's just one problem with your plan," Sophia said quietly. "Oh? And what's that?" Sophia reached for her phone, pressing a button that activated a recording app she'd started when Miranda first entered the room. "I recorded everything you just said. Corporate espionage, conspiracy to commit murder, plans to destroy a medical facility." She smiled weakly. "My lawyers are going to have a field day." Miranda's composure cracked for the first time. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" "Check your phone, Miranda. I think you'll find some interesting emails that just went out to the FBI, the medical board, and every major news outlet in the city." Sophia's smile grew stronger. "I may be stuck in a hospital bed, but I'm still very good at my job." The truth was, Sophia had anticipated Miranda's betrayal the moment she'd hung up on their previous conversation. She'd spent the night setting up automated systems, legal tripwires, and evidence caches that would activate if anything happened to her or Ethan. Miranda's confession was just the final piece of a puzzle Sophia had been solving for hours. Miranda's face cycled through rage, disbelief, and calculation before settling on cold fury. "You have no idea what you've done. Without Kane's empire, the supernatural community will fracture into chaos. Humans will die. Humans have been dying under Kane's leadership for years, Ethan interrupted. The supernatural community needs new leadership, not the same corruption with a different face. And you think you can provide that leadership? Miranda laughed bitterly. You're an exile, a killer, a half-breed mutt who. She never finished the sentence. Ethan moved faster than human perception, his hand closing around her throat with enough pressure to cut off her air supply. Choose your next words very carefully, he said quietly. Because I'm done listening to people insult the woman carrying my child. Miranda clawed at his hand, her face turning red, but Ethan's grip was unbreakable. Just as she started to lose consciousness, he released her, letting her collapse to the floor gasping. Get out, he said. And Miranda? If I ever see you again, I won't be so merciful. Miranda struggled to her feet, shooting venomous glances at both of them. This isn't over. Kane may be finished, but there are others who'll take his place. Others who won't tolerate a human contaminating pack bloodlines. Then they'll have to go through me, Ethan replied simply. After Miranda fled, Sophia and Ethan were left alone in the wreckage of her hospital room. Despite everything, the violence, the betrayal, the constant threats, Sophia felt strangely peaceful. It's really over, isn't it? She asked. The immediate threat, yes. But building something better is going to take time. Good thing we're both good at long-term planning. The board meeting 3 days later was unlike anything in Shin Industries' history. Sophia sat at the head of the conference table, still pale from her hospital stay but radiating the quiet authority that had built her empire. Beside her sat Ethan, no longer hiding his true nature but presenting himself as both her business partner and the alpha of a reformed werewolf pack. The evidence against Marcus Chen and William Chen is overwhelming, Sophia announced to the assembled board members. Embezzlement, conspiracy, corporate espionage. They'll be facing federal charges within the week. The mood in the room was subdued. Half the board looked ashamed, the other half looked terrified. Everyone understood that Sophia held their professional futures in her hands. However, she continued, I'm not interested in wholesale termination of the board. What I am interested in is building a new kind of company, one that operates with complete transparency and unprecedented innovation. She gestured to Ethan, who stood and activated a presentation that had taken them hours to prepare. Shin Industries is entering into a joint venture with Stone Pack Enterprises, Ethan announced. We're creating the first legitimate supernatural human business alliance in history. The presentation outlined a revolutionary approach to corporate structure. Werewolf-enhanced senses would revolutionize security consulting. Supernatural strength and endurance would transform construction and logistics. Pack loyalty and communication systems would create unprecedented efficiency in project management. This is insane, one board member whispered. This is the future, Sophia corrected. The supernatural community has been operating in the shadows for too long, surviving on illegal enterprises and exploiting both humans and their own people. We're offering a better way. And if it fails? Sophia's smile was sharp as a blade. Then we'll have failed attempting something extraordinary rather than succeeding at something ordinary. She stood, her hand moving instinctively to her still flat stomach. My child will inherit a world where being different isn't something to hide, where power is used to protect rather than exploit, where business success doesn't require moral compromise. The vote to reinstate her as CEO was unanimous. Kane's final attack came not through violence but through something far more insidious. Sophia was in her office, reviewing the legal framework for the supernatural human alliance, when she felt it, a cold presence settling over her like a shroud. The lights dimmed without cause, and she could smell something metallic and wrong in the air. Ethan appeared in her doorway instantly, his supernatural senses detecting the threat. Curse magic, he said grimly. Kane's using his last strength to target the baby. Sophia felt icy tendrils of something alien and hostile wrapping around her consciousness, seeking the life growing inside her. The supernatural world had just become brutally, personally real. What do I do? She asked, fighting panic. Trust me. Ethan moved to stand behind her chair, his hands settling on her shoulders. And trust yourself. You're stronger than Cain ever understood. The curse pressed harder, and Sophia felt her vision blur. But instead of succumbing to fear, she found herself analyzing the attack like any other business problem. Cain was using supernatural means, but he was still fundamentally a bully who relied on intimidation and force. He's trying to make me afraid, she said, her voice growing steadier. Trying to convince me that I'm helpless against supernatural threats. Are you? Sophia thought about everything she'd accomplished, building an empire from nothing, surviving corporate warfare, exposing criminal conspiracies, outmaneuvering enemies who'd underestimated her intelligence and determination. No, she said firmly. I'm not helpless. I'm Sophia Chen, and I don't surrender to bullies. The curse shattered like glass, leaving Cain's presence screaming in frustrated rage before disappearing entirely. How? Ethan asked, amazement clear in his voice. Because the supernatural world operates on belief and will just as much as power, Sophia replied. And my will is stronger than his. 6 weeks later, Victor Cain died in a supernatural prison designed to hold creatures whose crimes bridged both human and otherworld justice systems. His death was quiet, unremarkable, and completely overshadowed by the revolutionary changes happening in the business world. The Stonechen Alliance had become the most talked about corporate development in decades. Competitors struggled to understand how a company could suddenly achieve such unprecedented efficiency, security, and innovation. Stock prices soared, employee satisfaction reached record highs, and other supernatural communities began reaching out about similar partnerships. Sophia stood in her office, watching construction crews, half human, half werewolf, working on the new headquarters that would house both Chen Industries and Stone Pack Enterprises. The building's design incorporated both cutting-edge human technology and supernatural practical requirements. Regrets? Ethan asked, joining her at the window. About which part? Falling in love with a werewolf, merging my company with a supernatural pack, or revolutionizing the concept of corporate partnerships? Any of it. All of it. Sophia turned to face him, noting how he'd grown into his role as Alpha. The guilt and uncertainty that had shadowed him when they first met had been replaced by quiet confidence and unshakable purpose. The only thing I regret, she said, is that it took a near-death experience for us to stop dancing around what we both wanted. Ethan stepped closer, his expression growing serious. Speaking of what we both want, I have a proposition for you. Another business deal? A merger. He pulled a document from his jacket pocket. A complete integration of our lives, our companies, and our futures. Sophia took the papers, her eyebrows rising as she read. This is a marriage contract. This is a partnership agreement. The marriage contract is attached as Exhibit A. She flipped through the pages, noting clauses that covered everything from corporate governance to child-rearing responsibilities to supernatural pack dynamics. It was the most thoroughly researched marriage proposal in history. There's a prenup, she observed. Of course there's a prenup. You're a billionaire CEO, and I'm a werewolf alpha with potentially violent political enemies. We'd be stupid not to protect each other's interests. Sophia reached the final page and started laughing. You made yourself the junior partner in our personal relationship. You're the senior partner in everything that matters. I'm just providing muscle and supernatural expertise. And love? Ethan moved closer, his hands framing her face with infinite gentleness. And love. All the love I have, for as long as I live. In that case, Sophia said, reaching for a pen, I accept your proposal. But I'm adding a clause. What kind of clause? The kind that says if you ever lie to me again about anything, business, personal, or supernatural, I get to renegotiate all terms in my favor. Deal. They signed the contracts in her office, witnessed by Rebecca and Marcus Webb, with the setting sun painting the city in shades of gold and amber. It wasn't a traditional romantic proposal, but it was perfectly them, practical, thoroughly planned, and completely committed. Epilogue, 6 months later. The twins were born on a Tuesday morning in November, arriving with the punctuality that seemed to run in the Chen family genes. Elena Sophia Stone entered the world first, followed 3 minutes later by her brother, James Ethan Stone. Sophia held them both while Ethan paced the hospital room with the nervous energy of a new father who'd fought supernatural assassins but was terrified of accidentally breaking something so small and precious. "They're perfect," he said for the 10th time in as many minutes. "They're exhausting," Sophia corrected, but her smile was radiant with happiness and exhaustion. "And loud. Are werewolf babies naturally this vocal? Only the ones destined to be leaders." The hospital room was filled with flowers, congratulations from business partners, supernatural allies, and the extended Pack family that had formed around their revolutionary alliance. Chen Industries stock had reached record highs following news of the successful pregnancy, with investors treating the twins' birth as proof of the company's long-term stability and continuity. Marcus knocked on the door, carrying a bottle of champagne and wearing the expression of someone who'd been completely reformed by witnessing his cousin's near-death experience. "I brought a peace offering," he said carefully. "And an apology." "Again." "The peace offering is accepted," Sophia replied. "The apology is noted and appreciated. The trust will have to be earned." "I understand." "And Sophia? For what it's worth, I think Dad would be proud of what you've built." After Marcus left, Sophia and Ethan settled into comfortable silence, watching their children sleep with the contentment of people who'd fought for everything they had and won. "Any regrets now?" Ethan asked, echoing their conversation from months earlier. "Just one," Sophia replied. "What's that?" "I wish we'd gotten the nursery finished before they arrived. Between the corporate expansion and the Pack integration meetings, we never had time to." "Actually," Ethan interrupted, "I took care of that yesterday. Called in a few favors from the construction crews." "What kind of favors?" "The kind that result in a fully furnished nursery, complete with supernatural security systems and a direct communication link to Pack headquarters." Ethan's smile was slightly sheepish. "I may have been planning this for longer than you realized." Sophia laughed, the sound rich with joy and exasperation. "Of course you did. My brilliant, overprotective werewolf husband who plans for everything. Your brilliant, overprotective werewolf husband who loves you and would do anything to keep you and our children safe." "Good," she said, settling more comfortably against his shoulder. "Because we're going to need all of that brilliance and protection for what comes next." "What comes next?" "World domination, obviously. The Stonechen Alliance is just the beginning. There are supernatural communities all over the world who could benefit from legitimate business partnerships, and I intend to expand into every major market by the time the twins are old enough to take over." Ethan stared at her for a moment, then threw back his head and laughed. "I should have known. Most people would be content with revolutionizing one industry. You want to reshape the entire global economy. I want to build a world where our children can be proud of who they are, all of who they are." Sophia looked down at the twins, her expression fierce with protective love. Human and werewolf, business leaders and Pack members, bridging worlds that have been separate for too long. And if some people don't want those worlds bridged, then they'll learn what happens when you underestimate a Chen. Her smile was sharp enough to cut diamonds. "We didn't build an empire by accepting other people's limitations." Outside the hospital window, the city sprawled beneath them, a landscape of possibility and power, human ambition and supernatural potential, all waiting to be shaped by their vision of what the future could hold. In his supernatural prison, Victor Kane's empire crumbled into dust and memory. Miranda Stone fled the country under threat of federal prosecution, her social and professional reputation destroyed by recorded confessions and financial crimes. The old ways of doing business, built on fear, exploitation, and the separation of supernatural and human communities, died with them. But in a hospital room overlooking the city they would transform together, Sophia and Ethan Stone held their children and planned an empire that would span both worlds, built on love, respect, and the revolutionary idea that being different wasn't something to hide. Their love story had become a blueprint for the future, proving that the greatest power came not from domination but from partnership, not from fear but from trust, and not from keeping worlds apart but from bringing them together. The hunt was over. The empire was just beginning. Thank you for listening to this story. Like, share and subscribe for more of this type of stories daily.